Good afternoon. My name is Ben Bohr, and I'm on the Sloan Research Papers team. And it is my pleasure to introduce our next paper, which is a graphical model for basketball mat simulation. And the way the presentation will be structured is about a 20-minute talk, and it will be followed by a 5-minute Q&A. And the way we'll do that is you'll raise your hand at the end of the presentation, and I'll come to you with a mic so you can ask your question to our presenters. And here to present is Min-hwan Oh and Shiraj Keshri. So please join me in welcoming our presenters. Good luck. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. We're very excited to be here today. So in recent years, with the advent of the player tracking data in the NBA, we've seen many new interesting metrics, and they have provided good insights on whether to evaluate players and teams, whether it's about player efficiency or shot efficiency, rebound, or defense. But my co-authors and I were more interested to see sort of the bigger picture that can encompass and incorporate all these new ways of looking at the game and putting these pieces together to sort of address a more overarching issue, which is to simulate and predict the outcome of a game. And I don't think I have to stress too much on the significance of the prediction and simulation in this room. And I understand that many of us may already understand the magnitude of the impact that precise and workable simulation method can bring to almost every dimension of the sports domain, from teams to the fan communities, also from the medias to of course, the betting market. Sorry, it's the, there you go. All right, so what is the scope of a simulation model that we propose? In other words, to what extent do we want to simulate? We can simply start from just win and loss, or we could even predict the points scored by each team. And if we want to be a little bit more detailed, we can even go into each possession of the game and simulate which player scores and who commits a turnover and so forth, which is like a play-by-play chart that we see. But we actually wanted to go even further. We actually wanted to simulate what happens within each possession. So who passes to whom, and who's taking a shot when a specific defender is guarding. So why are we interested in such microsimulation? And the answer lies in the nature of the sport itself. In a given basketball game on court, players interact with teammates and opponent players, with their performance outcome being interdependent. And also the performance of the team itself is not just a mere summation of individual performance. It's rather interactive. It's a dynamic interaction of the group of the individuals. So taking individual players' attributes into account and putting them in the context of the team and simulate on a micro level seems to be a very sensible approach. And we can also, so by this approach, we can answer the questions such as how will the Cavaliers do when LeBron is not playing? Or how will Steph Curry will perform tonight against the Hawks? And of course, we can answer the ultimate question, who will win the game? So we propose the simulation infrastructure that can build a bridge between the player identity and the team level network. So we model the progression of the game using the graphical model. So we basically use the model each touch and event in a game as the sequence of the transitions between discrete states. And as you can see from the site, the graph has basically the nodes which represents the either player or player actions and game events that can follow. Also, the edges representing the possible moves on the game flow. So generally, the game flow follows from the left-hand side to the right-hand side, where the team possession can start from either inbound pass, steal, defensive rebound, and so forth, and moves into the pass network. And then depending on whether the player takes a shot or commits a turnover, the corresponding events happen. To illustrate better how this graphical model works, we wanted to show a little clip of the match between the Spurs and the Heat. It shows the video clip starts from towards the end of the Heat possession and moves on to the Spurs possession. And it basically, we try to show how the actual event in the game can be replicated on the graph.
Okay, so having illustrated the potential of our graphical model to replicate a complicated sequence of events in an actual game, let's actually go through how our model is working here. Let's start from the pass network. So pass network is basically a network between the teams of the player. It's a network which decides or which runs this, how are the players going to pass the ball among each other. So let's take an example. Let's say Tim Duncan is on the court and he wants to pass the ball to someone. Now, there's Tony Parker on the court, there's Kawhi Leonard. And from historical data, you can see that Tim Duncan is more likely to pass the ball to Parker than Leonard. It's, according to our model, it's because Tony Parker has higher ability to attract the ball from Duncan compared to Leonard. So in our model, we propose this alpha matrix. So you can see that this is the pass network, and there's a matrix for the team. It's called the alpha matrix. The ijth element of this matrix is saying that what is the probability that player I passes the ball to player J if player I is passing the ball. Now, if you look at the denominator in the probability, you see that the denominator depends on the player on the court. So this says that our network is crucially defined by the players on the court. If a player changes, our network of passing completely changes, which makes sense. Okay, and also that once we learn this alpha matrix, if we take any arbitrary lineup, we can just construct the network for that lineup using this matrix. Okay, now pass network was important when the player wants to pass the ball. But what if the player wants to shoot the ball, right? So we learned a model which decides whether the player will take the shot or pass the ball. So according to this model, the probability that the player will shoot will depend on the player's propensity to shoot. It will also depend on the defender's ability to prevent the shot attempt. We represent that by beta, the ability of defense. The gamma represents the ability, the propensity to take the shot. And it also depends on who are the teammates on the court. Again, let's take an example. Let's say I have Westbrook on the court, and he wants to see whether he should pass the ball or take a shot. Now, if Durant is not on the court, it kind of makes sense that Westbrook is more likely to take the shot than to pass the ball. Also, if Westbrook is facing very strong defense, then he's more likely to pass the ball to some other player, not take the shot himself. So we take all these factors into account to learn the model for shot frequency. Now, let's say the player did decide to take the shot rather than pass the ball. Now, again, if he's taking the shot, he has to decide from which point he will take the shot. It's hard to simulate the exact XY location from where the shot is going to be taken. So what we did was we divided the court into 5 parts. These are also called the bases. And you can see it's numbered from 1 to 5, 1 being the closest to the basket, 5 being the farthest. From the historical data, we know that the players, how likely are the player to take a shot from different locations. So we can simulate using this from which basis is the player going to take the shot. Let's say the player is taking the shot from the basis D, right? Now, when the player is taking the shot, there might be a chance of shooting foul, right? Now, this probability of shooting foul depends on the shooter's ability to draw the foul. It also depends on the closest defender's foul proneness, right? So this is the model which says that if the player's ability to draw the foul is higher, there's more chances that there will be a foul. Similarly, if the defender is very, very foul prone, that gives higher probability of making a foul. Let's say the player is fouled according to this model. Now, when it's fouled, what happens is the player is going to shoot free throws, and we know from the historical data that what are the probabilities that he's going to make the free throw. But what if the player is not fouled? He takes the shot. Now, we need to decide from the model, is he going to make the shot or not? That brings us to our next step, which is the shot efficiency model. Now, given the location of the player on the court, the probability that the player is going to make the shot depends on his shot accuracy. It also depends on the closest defender's ability to deter the shot. So if the player's shot accuracy is high, he's more likely to make the shot. If the defense is strong, he will probably reduce the probability of making the shot. Let's say the player did make the shot according to the model. What's going to happen? The ball is going to go to the next player, to the next team through the inbound pass, as you can see in the graph. However, if the player misses the shot, then we have this opportunity of rebound. Now, the rebound, the teams that try, they compete to grab the rebound. Well, actually, it's not the teams which are competing. Every player is competing to grab the rebound. It's a free-for-all competition. So, according to our model, every player has two property of the rebound. One is the offensive ability to grab the rebound. One is the defensive ability to grab the rebound. Let's say the player I he's in a defensive position. He's trying to grab the rebound. The probability he's going to make the grab it depends on his ability, and it also depends on his team's defensive ability to grab the rebound and the offensive ability to grab the rebound. So the model basically tries to trade off and looks at which player has higher ability, and the player that's the player who grabs the rebound. Now, if there's a defensive rebound, we know what's going to happen. The ball is going to go to the opponent team, and it will start a whole new possession again. The same thing flowing on the network. If the ball goes to the offensive team, we know who grabbed the rebound, and he will start the possession again. So after going through the main parts of our model, we are showing here some of the features or the latent ability of players that we learned using our model. In the first column, you see there are 5 different bases, the B1 being the closest, B5 being the farthest from the court, from the basket. And you can see, for example, Tony Parker doesn't take too many shots from the 3-point line. On the other hand, Tim Duncan, he usually takes the shot close to the basket, being a power forward. He's also very efficient to take the shot. If you look at the second column, that's telling you that Tim Duncan is very good in grabbing the rebound. On the other hand, Tony Parker, he has a good inbound attraction, and he's not as good as Tim Duncan in the rebound part. If you look at the third column, that's showing the defensive ability to deter the shot efficiency. And you can see that Tim Duncan is a much better defender compared to Tony Parker. All right, so having illustrated the main ideas of our model, let's start on the results. So what we did was we looked at 70% of the matches in the year 2013-14, and we used that to train our model. And once we trained the model, we tried to predict for each game which team is going to win. How we do that is we simulate each game 100 times, and we assign the win to a team which wins more games. And so we predicted we predict the win percent of the team on that 70% of the matches, and there's a true win percent. And you can see that we get R square of 0.92, which shows that our model fits the data well. But that's not it. We want to see how good does our model do in the prediction set, right? So there's this 30% of the matches that we left for the testing. And you can see that in that set, we achieve a R square, which is a little bit lower, but it still shows that our model has good predictability. We also did 2 case studies. The first case study is about, we are illustrating how does the performance of the team changes if we change the lineup of the players. So we simulate the final, last year NBA final. We use the lineup used by Miami in the first game, and we look at 2 different lineups for San Antonio. In the first case, you see these 2 lineups are different, and the changes has been highlighted there. For example, in the first lineup, you see Diaw has been replaced by Splitter, and there are different changes. And so we simulate this game with 2 different lineups, San Antonio, and you can see that the result vary a lot. In the first case, the game ends up with 4-2, the finals, and in the second case, it ends with 3-4. So this shows that our model is sensitive to the lineup, and you can try different lineups and see which lineup is doing well. We also, in our model, we are also able to see how the players are performing. So this is just a snapshot of a simulation we did, and this is the box score that we got. So this basically shows that our model not only gives the winning and losing and the performance of the team, it also gives us how each player is going to perform.
Right. So we're going to go into some more fun case study, depending on where you're coming from. It's fun. So we have Josh Smith, the famous Josh Smith Pistons case. We know that the Pistons struggling with a 5-23 in the first 28 games of the season, and they decided to waive their starting player, Josh Smith. And then right after they did it, they started to have a huge success. They were on a winning streak. Now they became a playoff contender in the Eastern Conference. So what really happened? We all know, everybody knows, that he was not shooting well. He was shooting 39 from the field and 39% from the field and 24% from the three-pointers. But is it really about just his poor shooting that made the whole team, made a whole difference in the entire team? So we can take a look at the networks for the Pistons starting lineup before and after the Smith was waived. Before he was waived, as we can see on the left-hand side, that we see a lot of passes are going to Josh Smith. And also it's important to note that Brandon Jennings is receiving a lot of passes because, which was expected because of his position as a point guard. But it's interesting to see how many passes he received. Also, if you take a look at it, his shot frequency isn't as high as other players. But since he touches significantly more than other players, it eventually makes him a high-volume shooter. In fact, he was the one that was taking the most shot in the entire Pistons roster before he left. So if you look at the network after he was waived, you see there's a drastic change. There's the ball movement. You see the more balanced ball movement, and also which allows the players, the players with high efficiency shots would take a shot rather than Josh Smith taking a shot. Also, which makes the whole team offense more efficient. So we ran some experiment with or without Josh Smith. So for the games from December 26th to February 22nd, that's a period after Josh Smith's waiver, and we simulated. The first simulation was with Josh Smith. This was basically assuming that Smith was on the Pistons roster, that he was not waived. And also, we simulated without Josh Smith, which was the same case with the actual event. And as you can see, that there's a clear distinction in the result, in the team performance. And if you see the simulation without Josh Smith is, and compare with the actual result that happened, the actual result is well within the confidence interval of our simulation. So this is another fun sort of simulation, which is to basically illustrate how our simulation model can be sort of used to perform some hypothetical matchups. This is Pistons versus Pistons, and Pistons before Josh Smith was waived, and after he was waived. And as you can see that there's a clear winner in this case. So we propose the microsimulation infrastructure that can take the individual players' interactions to predict the outcome of the game on both team and player level. And then our model allows us to evaluate performance of hypothetical lineups against specific opponents, and also it gives us the insight on many locations on different players, and also the constructing of the lineups. We also plan to extend our model to capture pass network for lineups for the players from different teams who previously never played with each other, basically the unobserved instance. We know that there are some details that such as non-shooting foul, blocks, and so on, and that we didn't really take into account in our model yet. But these are just details that we can always put into. And also there are some sub-models that could be improved and put back in the model in place. But the overall the simulation infrastructure, the framework that we propose, that treating the team as sort of dynamic system and taking individuals into account, it seems to be the much more reasonable approach than the conventional approaches that we have in the simulation. Thank you very much.
Raise your hand if you're interested in asking a question.
Hi, thanks. Earlier today, we heard Shane Battier talk about the impact that he has in creating spacing, or had in creating spacing on the floor, which in turn made other people more productive. Now, your model talked about looking at the likelihood of someone to take a shot based on who's on the floor. Are you also looking at the success rate of those shots based on who's on the floor?
So in our model, the success rate of, if a player taking the shot, he's going to make it or not, is totally dependent on the player who is taking the shot and the defender who's guarding him at that point. It doesn't make sense to make the shot accuracy depend on other players on the court because it's the player who's taking the shot, so it should just depend on him, his accuracy, and the defender's ability.
Any more questions?
Yeah, you demonstrated the example of taking Josh Smith out of the Detroit lineup. How did your model perform when you added Josh Smith to the Houston lineup compared to their actual results?
So, in our simulation, we actually trained our model. So that's the sort of the last point in our thing that we have mentioned in the conclusion, which was if we were to sort of train your model in the first 20 or first part of the season, you may not have, you didn't really observe how the ball movement is going to be or how it's going to react. So that's something that we want to improve on. That's something that actually there's sort of idea that we actually think about it just past week. But yeah, for now we actually didn't perform the simulation to be short, and it's with current model, it's not so much about, let's say, evaluating players, how we're going to sort of build a completely new lineup with a player from a totally different team. So we probably, hopefully that answers your question.
Earlier we heard Mike D'Antoni speak about the detrimental effects of ball stoppers on the team. We saw that with Josh Smith. Did you guys see any correlation between the volume of passing and converting a shot attempt or diminishing return with the amount of passing, given those
Can you say that again, please? Sorry.
Did you guys see a correlation between the volume and amount of passes per possession?
And correlation between volume of...
Yeah, just the sheer amount of passes on a given set, on a possession.
Versus correlation between the passes and the success of the...
Yes. Yeah.
No, we didn't really go into the correlation between the number of passes or a success rate, or whether we actually saw that there is a sort of clear distinction in team network. There are, for example, the Spurs case, they tend to actually pass more, rather than, let's say, in the case with the Heat and the Spurs, there was a clear distinction. But it's not necessarily that the more passes is good or less passes is worse. So.
But as a sanity check, what we did was we just, according to our network, we simulated how many passes do players do before they take the shot. And we have actual data as well. So we try to see that how correlated they are, and they showed high correlation, that the number of shots you get from the network is similar to the number of shots you get from, the original match.
And this is our final question.
I wonder if you could talk about how you factored into your model the idea of being on a run or a hot hand. Like, do players make different decisions when they're playing well, or make different decisions if they're not playing well? And did you factor in momentum? And could this disprove the idea of a hot hand?
Sure. So again, these are the certain details that we do want to add to the model. We can only do as much as the data is available. We don't really have the data of if the shot was because of the momentum, players good momentum or not. But these are all the details that we can always add to the model. This is the whole idea here is to provide a infrastructure where you can always add the details that you want and make it better. But of course, in the future, we would take into account, how the player's past performance affects his future game performance, and yeah. So these are the future endeavors that we'll try to achieve.
All right, please join me in applauding our presenters.
Thank you.